it's a great big Kirblog, and we're all really puny. We're just tiny little specks about the size of Mickey Rooney. I'm back. Oh my God, it's been a exhausting, exhilarating, amazing couple weeks, I think now. I don't even remember when we did the last Kirblog with Scott Frericks, but we're back. I'm here. I'm good. I've gotten all the major tome stuff out of the way. For those of you who were following that stuff, I hope you enjoyed it. But we're back on schedule with the normal stuff again, so here we go. First one I thought would be appropriate in the wake of finishing up the tome series is a question I got a long time ago from HazzaBozza, who asked, what are your thoughts on shows, games, books, whatever, that have a big cast of characters? Do you think it adds spice and variety or makes the piece confusing and hard to keep track of all these characters? So for those of you who have followed my animation work for a long time, you can probably tell that I really do love great big universes of a million characters that you can sink your teeth into. A lot of the stuff that I watched early on, not even necessarily anime, but even American cartoons that had like giant casts, I found to be very intriguing. And there were a few particular shows that I think really kind of grounded that into my head in terms of the type of stuff that I wanted to make. The first one that I can remember, and one of the ones that often comes to mind in terms of how well it executed this whole idea, was actually Hey Arnold on Nickelodeon. Something that they marketed it in the early days of when it was first premiering, because I think they made like a bunch of episodes ahead of time before they put them up anywhere. But they were advertising it as like starring this big group of real kids in this kind of hybrid Seattle, New York kind of city, probably influences from other places. And they had a wide variety of even just in the Arnold and his friends from school. There was a huge maybe 10 to 15 different characters that were all important in varying capacities, but they were kind of at the forefront. But then you had all the people at Arnold's boarding house. You had all the people that lived in on his block. The butcher and the mailman and the florist, etc. And then you had all the individual parents and families of each of those kids, all the major characters, and then the teachers at the school and, some of the urban myth characters from around the city. I think about, and I'm going to directly relate this back, I think about Sailor Moon, which I've been watching a lot of lately. And I do still need to watch Crystal because I want to do a comparison Kirblog about Sailor Moon, the original series, and the Crystal series. But either way, something that I think is it's done well enough, but I think other shows probably balance it a little bit better. But Sailor Moon is still entertaining. It has a giant group of main characters, all part of that team, and then they have the outer Sailor Guardians like Neptune and Uranus and all that. And you have the villains of whatever that arc is, and you have Chibiusa and Tuxedo Mask, and then they the parents kind of take a back seat, and some of those other characters don't really show up as often, like Umino and Naru and etc. But yeah, what they kind of did with the whole Power Rangers style, or I guess Super Sentai style, villain of the week. We do a thing and then we accomplish everything in that half an hour for that particular thing, unless it's a bigger arc and they're doing a multi-episode story or whatever. They'd often, I find, try to divide things up so that every season Jupiter gets an episode, Mars gets one, Mercury, Venus, Sailor Moon will often be just around no matter what. And then there will be other ones that focus on different combinations of characters, etc. And just going on for 200 episodes, I'm about 100 of them in, and I find that sometimes the balance can be off. It's tipped more in the favor of some characters more than others. But for the most part, it's still really entertaining, and it gives everybody a moment or two to shine. I'm just about to watch one at the time I'm recording this. I think the next new one I'll be watching is one about Mercury fighting against the Witches 5, because I'm still in Sailor Moon S right now. But my point is, compared to Hey Arnold, they could do, if they'd have a season of 13 or 26 episodes, they could do each episode focusing on a completely different person and a completely different social circle of that city. That city was the universe, quote unquote, of Hey Arnold. Sometimes they'd go beyond it to other places, like where the creepy cousin lived or whatever. But by and large, it was usually about Arnold and some of his immediate family and his friends, because he was the central focus of the show. But then, and often Helga, and her family would get a lot of attention, to the point where they were almost considered to be getting their own spin-off, which I would have loved to have seen if that ended up working out. But yeah, it was it was such a great balance in the fact that, like, that show had so many different things that it could draw on. Because when you have a long running series, sometimes the biggest problem is that, even if you have like one of the most, interesting and like open type of concepts ever, like you think of like Fairly Odd Parents, for instance, where like it's the magic element of that, and you can have, the fact that his fairy godparents will grant whatever wishes he wants. That opens itself up to a million different, ideas for episodes. The difference with Fairly Odd Parents, though, is that it has a much smaller cast of like main characters, and just characters in general. They've been adding more, I know, with like the dog and stuff like that. But with Hey Arnold, there were so many different like kind of dimensions to that, where again, these different like social circles, you could tell different stories with them, and again, you could use different combinations of characters. More often than not, it would involve Arnold in some way, shape, or form. He'd be around there somehow. But yeah, all in all, it made for a really amazing variety of different types of stories. It's like, what if we did an episode about the butcher running for office? Or what if we did an episode about the bully kid turning over a new leaf, and he is punished for stealing a ham from the butcher, and he works with the butcher and becomes his apprentice or something, What about that same bully kid? Then he happens to be Jewish, and he has an episode about him having to face his bar mitzvah that he's afraid to go to, and just stuff like that. Like those are, and all three of those episodes were real. In case you guys didn't see the show before, if you didn't grow up with it, like those were all real episode concepts, and they were all brilliant and well executed, and they all fit within the scope of that world. And again, Arnold, the main character, was all part of those in smaller ways than others, and he'd have more ones that were focused just on him. But what he kind of became later on was also kind of the voice of reason to everybody else, and he'd try to give advice and just kind of be an omnipresent. If anything, he was in a way kind of like the Nihilok of the show, in that he was the unfaltering force of good that is just always present in that world, if you know what I mean. Definitely not in the same kind of like over the top way as Nihilok, but I think he feels the same kind of role in that sort of way. And obviously he has his own issues as well. Those were from that show in particular. I learned a lot of lessons about integrating into my own series with Tome. I guess just to talk about that and shift gears a little bit as well. One of the problems I experienced with TV Tome Adventures when I did that series back in the day is I kind of ended up going the route of what happened with Dragon Ball Z. Although I say that, and Super is, I think, kind of going in a different direction, thankfully. But Dragon Ball Z had a giant cast of characters, but it didn't really focus on a whole lot of them. And so when you have like the big group shots of every single character in Dragon Ball Z that are all part of the good guy force, like Oolong and Poir and Yamcha and all those guys, like after a while it's like, what are they doing? They have no really major significance to the plot whatsoever. They're just kind of there, and they're by extension related to or friends with the main important characters that get all of the attention and screen time and development and blah blah blah. And and that was kind of what was unfortunate, because those characters are cool. Like, I liked Yamcha and Oolong and all those guys. And again, thankfully, I think with the new movies and with Dragon Ball Super, which just started airing recently, I think that they're going in the direction of maybe trying to divide up a little bit more attention to those characters, because they can just write stuff for them now. But that was what I ended up kind of doing with the old series, where I had like, Alpha and Zeto and a couple other characters being the main focused ones. And, Curb and Flame Girl and GC and all them ended up kind of taking and Nihilok as well. They ended up taking kind of a back seat. And, that kind of sucked. With what I tried to do with this version of the show, the newer one, is that, especially because it was going to be on a little bit of a shorter basis, I wasn't going to be producing 100 episodes or whatever, I wanted to give all 5 of the main characters an important purpose in the overall arc and give them a decent amount of attention each. Now, again, some characters do take priority over others. Because if you have like main characters, like the mainest of the main, of course they're going to end up getting the most screen time or development. That's most likely. But and that doesn't necessarily that's not a bad thing, but it's good again to have a balance of everybody getting a fair amount of attention and just being written material to use in the first place. Because if you end up having a bunch of characters that are just like, we're here too, buy us, maybe if there's merchandise, then it just comes off as really shallow. What I also tried to do was have different combinations of, especially in the early season when it was the first few episodes, where it's like, this episode has these 3 characters and this episode has these 3 characters. You can make for different scenarios and different dynamics and allow itself for interesting writing. I do wish that if I had all the time and money and resources in the world, I would have done a ton of like just fun one-off filler episodes and things of like Saturn Diva and Hyperlinks and Elliscope and Whitey and Granda and T-Bones. I had one idea for an episode that was about like Nylok and Granda and T-Bones going on a quest together and fighting dinosaur people or something, because T-Bones was trying to get Nylok and Granda to get along a little bit better or something. And that's just like an offhanded example. Like there were a bunch of different ideas like that. One of them, we had an idea for like a Clue parody where like Serpentine was going to be the Tim Curry character, and all the side characters would have been the 6 characters from Clue. And I think that would have been like when Alpha and the others were doing the Net King battles. That was an idea for something. I just that allows for a lot of different like other silly ideas. Tome was a little limited in terms of like how many different interesting stories I could tell because of it being the setting that it was. But I think that with some further thought, I could have fleshed some things out further. But again, lessons learned for whatever comes next after that's all done. But yeah, I mean, so those are things that I would have liked to have done. But I tried to keep a lot of these lessons that I learned from these other shows in mind as much as possible. It's funny too, because I think of like Star Wars, for instance. I'm actually not that big of a Star Wars fan. I've seen all the the movies. I grew up with the original non-special edition versions of the first trilogy, on VHS because my dad had the box set. And, I enjoy it for what it is, but I'm not like really, really hardcore, like big into Star Wars. But I acknowledge, obviously, they're legendary films, of course, and, the presence that they have in our culture, 100%. But what I do understand about why people, absolutely love it, not just because like, the films are classics and they have such, kind of great classic tropes that have really, kind of set the bar for a lot of other movies to come. But in terms of like when you're really a hardcore Star Wars fan and you're like into the lore of stuff. Granted, I know that George Lucas and his crew sometimes make things a little too difficult to follow along with what the hell is happening in terms of the levels of what is canon. I've heard that there's like different stages of like this is this percentage of canon or whatever that's a totally dependent thing or whatever. But I'm not even getting into that. The point is, I get why being a Star Wars fan is so so appealing and really diving into that universe, because it is literally well, I guess not a universe, but it's universe, just like how the universe of Harold was that city and the outskirts of it. The whole galaxy of Star Wars with all these different planets and solar systems and races and alliances and armies and whatever, like, and the different combinations that thereof from all those different places together and how those things tie in. That's really cool. That's like, there's so much to just like be invested into and research, and like I'm sure there's probably lots of mystery and stuff like just beyond the like the extended universe, I guess, or I don't forget what the term is, but the stuff beyond the movies, like the novels and video games and things. Like, I completely get what is so intriguing about that, even though it's not for me. And actually, in a way, Dragon Ball is like that for me, even though the series itself is not necessarily done that way. I'm hoping again that Super will go in the direction of like exploring more of that stuff in general. But Dragon Ball's big universe and its lore and its different play, I guess more so like the actual like lore of like the godly worlds and the different dimensions and how the whole Dragon Ball world fits into it. And now we have this thing open up with like different dimensions, like different realities, I guess. That I'm really intrigued about too. That's a little bit different in terms of like the characters to be invested into. I think Star Wars probably captures the best of both worlds. Haha. And I mean, even I think now of World of Warcraft, and if Liz were here, she could say this much better than I am. But from my conversations with her, I mean, she's so incredibly emotionally invested, for such a long time into the lore of WoW. And I know that there are like named characters that have like their own whole backstories and everything, but I think from what I've gathered, it's more so just like the actual world of Warcraft that is so intriguing to people who are very hardcore fans of the story and the characters and everything, which I think is totally cool. And I've gotten to kind of see through her screen shares like what some of the locations are, and because that's the thing is like locations, even beyond characters, like locations can be really interesting and make you invested into a universe of characters because they're cool places for them to be going, and then they might be tied to whatever it is that they're going through, depending on the story. It's funny too because I think this also I often keep leading into this whole deal of like when you make something creative, what are you trying to say with it? What is the kind of whole like moral of it or whatever. That's something that I've also learned about in terms of my big like magnum opus IP is Balancing Act, which a lot of people know. And I actually, by the way, I appreciate a lot of people have been saying since Tome ended, they've been like, oh, I hope you do Balancing Act next, and I'm going to. But on that same note too, what I've kind of realized about that was I wanted that to be my big like whoa lore and giant world of a zillion characters and stuff, and then I realized that kind of takes away from the focus of I want to tell something more human about like what the characters are going through personally. And sometimes when you get a little bit too like crazy with building the world, I mean it's incredibly important to do that, but I think when you get a little too caught up in that, it takes away from the actual story and what the character development is and what the relatability is supposed to be to the audience, because that stuff only goes so far. Like I think that what you're trying to say and what is the experience that you're sharing. This is how Pete Docter described it on the little intro he gave to Inside Out. Is that we're people who are making these movies and shows and games, and we're trying to say something to you and relate to you, who are watching and enjoying these things and playing them, etc. So for Balancing Act, I think I want to, especially if I end up doing it as a movie or maybe a series of movies or whatever, I want to keep everything as kind of tight knit as possible, so it's not being overrun with like, and this is the demon world, and this is the space world, and this is the what. It's like whatever. Like, not only has that stuff been done to death, but it's not the main focus anyway. It shouldn't be. So, but that's another lesson learned. Whatever comes next in terms of the next big thing that I end up doing. These are all things that I've learned, both from doing it myself and from continuing to observe. You look at Adventure Time, Steven Universe, where the world and all the characters. Steven Universe, what the hell am I talking about? Is another great example in the same kind of way as Hey Arnold. There's definitely the most amount of focus is on Steven and the gems, but just today as I'm recording this, there was an episode about Onion. There's 2 more to air after that, so I'm a little late to the party. I might do another Steven Universe Kirblog at some point. We'll see. But I mean, those are more great examples. Adventure Time, that's one of the big things that keeps people intrigued, and they were keeping a good balance of the character development and the building the world of the land of and what was the whole deal with that and how it ties in with the pre-apocalyptic Earth and everything. So it's a lot, but I think that's going to wrap us up for now. So in the comments below, finally, we're back to this again. Let me know what is your favorite game, or I talked about TV shows a lot, but movies, games, anything you like, Harry Potter or Fallout or I don't know, etc. Any things like that you're really big into for the for its universe and its gigantic cast of characters, and do you think that it really owns it? Do you feel like it could be used more, or are there ones that you wish executed that whole idea of having a giant world to sink your teeth into better, or is there a franchise that you think executes it perfectly? Let me know. I'm curious about some other examples. Give me some details as to why you like those so much, because maybe I'll even check them out. And as I still have a good bank of ideas, but please let me know if you have ideas for future Kirblog topics. Let me know, and I will definitely keep them into consideration. I have a bunch that are like, what do you think of blank franchise? But I don't want to keep doing a million of those, so I'm saving those for just the right time, but we'll come to those eventually. And also, if you have not seen the finale to Tome, Terrain of Magical Expertise, my web series, go check out episode 15, Truth, Tears, Ambition. We worked incredibly hard on it. We had an amazing screening at Anime Expo, which you can check out the panel to that as well. And we also have the Tome Season 2 soundtrack now available for purchase on Bandcamp. So go check all that stuff out if you're a fan of the show. And if you haven't watched Tome yet, now's a good time. So go check it out because it's awesome, and I'm really proud of it. And I love you all, and thank you for listening, and I will catch you later. Bye-bye.